Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the land upon which we gather here today, the Meanjin land. I also would like to pay respects to the traditional custodians of this land, our elders past and present and emerging, and acknowledge that it always was and always will be Indigenous land. Talofa. G'day and warm greetings from Australia. My name is Sarah Fata and I have the privilege and honour to co-host today and introduce the very first episode of Shut Your Mouth podcast.
What podcast?
Did you know that there's a rise in the phenomenon of a unique and contemporary family form, and that is blended families? The 2021 Australian Institute of Family Studies showed that there had been an increase of 2,289 blended families in just 5 years. And there's approximately 103,000 blended families in just Australia alone. The definition of blended family means a family consisting of a couple, the children they have had together, and the children from previous relationships. Well, the definition could be put simply. There's so many category definitions of what a blended family could look like. And here, to give insight, capture and share about her experience as a blended family parent, the official host of Shut Your Mouth podcast, Julie Slofa. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Sarah. First of all, I want to thank you for your time and effort in helping me facilitate this and co-host my very first podcast.
Yes.
Welcome to you.
Thank you.
And a massive welcome to everyone watching or tuning in today.
Awesome. I have to know, share with your listeners, where on earth did this title of Shut Your Mouth podcast come from?
Oh my gosh. So I had a whole heap of names, but none of them really stood out to me. So I decided on Shut Your Mouth because throughout the different stages and challenges in my life, I had trained myself to shut my mouth. So, and I have an example to share. So, many years ago, I had a male work colleague reveal himself to me in the workplace. So what had happened was he stood in front of me and said, "I have something to show you." Reached into his pants, grabbed out his penis, and stood there. I didn't know how to react. I was so shocked.
What the hell?
And that very day, my husband was actually picking me up from work, right? So I jumped in the car and he's like, "Oh, how's your day?" And I'm like, "Yeah, good."
It was a dick of a day.
Yeah, and I was on my way to my netball game after work.
Yeah.
And I remember getting in the car and I remember myself thinking, shut your mouth, don't say anything. It's my word. If I ever was to tell work or whatever, it was my word against his. And I felt like if this was to ever come to surface, no one would believe me, And I think that stems from like stuff from childhood, feeling worthy, having that worthiness and not feeling like you're worthy enough to tell, to tell the story. Suppressing a lot of emotions as a child growing up. In the household we grew up in, we never talked about sex, drugs, pornography, how to regulate emotions, that sort of thing. And I think the biggest one for me was believability. I never thought that anyone would believe my story if I was to tell it. I'm not too sure where in my childhood where I picked up that limiting belief. So that was the story I was telling myself.
Yeah.
But eventually, I told my husband, eventually, just not there and then, because can you imagine?
Yeah. I'm he's sitting here in front of us and thank God. Because I can only picture one way, that he would be in jail.
Yeah, honestly. And that's what I was thinking, was I can't tell him right now, right? Let's just hop in the car, go to a netball game, and maybe I could tell him later.
Wow.
And that's because I was thinking, if I was to tell him right now, he would walk me back in there.
Yeah.
And he would knock him the F out.
Yeah. 100%. I don't even know him, but I just think that innately that would be your knee-jerk reaction. You'd be so infuriated.
So then he would go to jail. I didn't want it to affect my work. And we did have an HR department at the time, but it goes back to that, I'm not worthy enough, or no one's going to believe me.
Wow.
And it was around the time that there were no cameras installed. They have cameras now, but back then there wasn't any cameras. So then again, I was like, it's my word against his. I'm just going to shut my mouth.
Wow.
Right, but I eventually told my husband, and so I guess this Shut Your Mouth podcast is me giving me permission to no longer feel like I need to shut my mouth.
Yeah, to no longer be silenced.
Yeah, and that whatever story I have to tell, be worthy of that story, or be, there's valuable lessons behind the things that happen to us, regardless of what others think and feel about that situation. I think it has its place to share, and maybe it'll help somebody out there.
100%. I think it takes a lot of courage and bravery to step up and be willing to tell your story. Yeah. So congratulations on your first episode.
Thank you.
You're most welcome. I definitely am very honored to be here. Especially because I'm a single mama too, and I just think this is really important, and it matters to hear part of your story that you're about to share with us, but also just to navigate that dynamic of blended families as well.
Yep.
Tell us more. What inspired? That's the name of the podcast, but what do you intend, or what is the purpose behind you wanting to do this podcast itself, or is there a main thing to it specifically?
I think I wanted to bring forth the whole blended family topic, because we back in the days, we're a blended family, 20 years in the making. So back then, we didn't really have an example to follow. There wasn't a script or a book, or there probably were books, but for me, my people that I was surrounded with, I felt like I was alone. No one. I felt like I was going through what we were going through on my own.
Wow.
You know, and there was no one else who would understand. And therefore, like, you don't really share, like, the stuff that happens to you, because here I am thinking, like, oh, this is going to be weird and no one's going to be interested, or, you know, no one understands what you're going through, pretty much. So I wanted to bring, like, this topic to talk about, because I think there's more blended families now more than ever.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Absolutely. Like the little bit of stat within Australia in itself.
That's right, that's Dad.
Yeah. You are right. And you asked me this question, like, who do you know, like, within your circle that has, like, blended families? And I was like, I come from a blended family. And I didn't even, like, that light bulb didn't
I was thinking that. I was like, wait, I thought you said you didn't know any blended families.
At the time, it was, like, hard to think, but I was like, the more that I pondered the question, the more I was like, holy heck, like, I know heaps of people that, by definition, like, again, as I had read in the stats, like, there's so many nuances and dynamic and categories of a blended family. Also, what we know is step families as well. So it's actually just, like, a lot of what I see, you know?
Yeah.
My father remarried, and I'm part of a blended family as well in that sense. I would say more so we lean more towards, like, step family.
Yeah.
But yeah, shocking for that realization. I was like, Sarah, you're part of a blended family. But yeah, so tell us your story. Like, tell us the story of, like, this whole, like, your experience and your journey as a blended mama, like, as a blended family parent.
Wow, okay. So let's take it back to when I was dating my husband. I was 19 at the time. And this is, like, you know, prime stage of drinking, clubbing, you know, all that fun stuff. So I think we may have just come back from a night out clubbing, and I knew that he had a daughter when I was dating him. We were, like, I had met him, like, years before that, but I had gone back home. I was here on holiday when I first met him, and then I went back home to Auckland and then came back, and he had a daughter. So I knew that he had a daughter, but then we met up again and started seeing each other. So I think, we had come back from clubbing, and we were in his room, and I think he went to go get a drink, right? He goes out to get a drink or whatever, I can't even remember. And he comes back into the room with this baby. And so I automatically was, like, sat up and sort of, you know, feeling uncomfortable and awkward. And he sits down on the bed with this baby, and he's like, introduces me to the baby. And I was like, hey, baby.
He's such a bitch. Naturally, like.
And I just couldn't hide my feelings. I was just like...
How old were you?
I was 19.
Right, okay.
I was 19. So I don't know what he was thinking. I don't know what he was thinking, like, you know, will she like me even more, like, you know, show up this baby? I don't know, but what I was thinking was, oh, hell no. You better take that baby outside.
Well, at 19, you're a baby yourself, aren't you?
Yeah, pretty much. So I wasn't, you know, I didn't back down in how I felt. I was just like, I didn't hide it. I was just like, couldn't even sit in the room properly. I'm just like looking around and, you know, looking at this baby. And I just said to him, look, I ended up saying to him, is it okay if you just take her out?
Wow.
So then he took her out of the room. And that was my first encounter with my daughter. So I think she was 8 months at the time. And she's going to be 21 next May.
Wow.
So
21.
yeah. So she's my first baby. But yeah, to think back now to that, it's like, oh my goodness.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
How was that dynamic between you and your husband? Like, could he notice that you were like standoffish to begin with? And like, did that change the dynamic of your relationship? Like,
Yeah, for sure he noticed, like, and did it change? I think it did a little bit, because what I wanted for myself, like growing up, I was like, there is no way that I want to be with a guy who's got kids, you know?
Right.
Because I didn't want to deal with like the baggage that it comes with, you know, and all that stuff, you
Right.
know, the other woman and all that. I was like, I don't want to deal with that.
right.
I'm just happy, you know, like being with someone who's like, it's so much easier. It's so much easier
Easier. Right. Keyword.
to be with somebody who hasn't had kids, you know, because you don't have to deal with all that.
Right. When did the events change? Like, when was the turn of events where you were like, okay, I gotta sort of like make a decision here that I'm still going to be in the picture and I still want to
Oh my gosh.
commit to the baby just as much as you're committing to your husband?
So I think, so what happened was we were dating at the time, and I think a couple of years in, or about a year in, I fell pregnant.
Right.
And then, that will be a podcast for later on. And then we had a shotgun wedding.
Okay.
So, and that again will be another podcast. But I think I was kind of stuck in that situation where I couldn't really move, because even I wasn't sure at that time, whether I wanted to be with this guy, you know? But it was like, well, you're pregnant, so what are you going to do? You're going to, you know, ride it out, or... So we got married, and which then I became an instant stepmom. So I was a stepmom before I actually was a mum to my own children.
Right.
And that was weird. Like it's like all of a sudden, you know, like you're a mum to a child that's not even yours, and it's like trying to navigate all that and be like, and try and be true to myself at the same time, you know?
Yeah.
So it was really tough.
Yeah.
And I think during that time, it was hard for my daughter as well, because she probably felt like, you know, my...
Resistance.
Yeah, resistance and just uncertainty, you know, like trying to learn how to love her.
Yeah.
Like, if I was to be honest with myself, I think it took a good maybe 2 years
Wow.
to fully embrace her and get over myself and just love her genuinely, you know, like from my heart. Like,
Wow. Wow.
yeah.
That would take a lot. 2 years. Thanks for being honest. And did that cause a lot of conflict between you and Jackson? Like, in the 2 years that it had unfolded, or?
Like, lots of stuff happened within the first 2 years of marriage, because I wasn't even like, to be honest, I didn't expect this marriage to last more than 2 years.
Sorry, I just so straight
You know?
up.
What'd you say?
I said you're just so straight up.
Honestly, no, I didn't. Like, and I really didn't. I didn't, because my heart wasn't in it,
Right.
you know. I didn't even know, like I said before, like was a child involved already, and that was enough to make me not want to be there.
Yeah.
But then I was pregnant, so I sort of had to just work it out myself, you know. What was the question?
That's a good question. Oh, did the conflict arise within those 3 years?
So heaps happened, right? So I was trying to figure out, do I want to be here? Do I not? What am I going to do with this baby that I'm carrying? But I think within that time, like the 2 years, after the 2 years, things started to, like my heart changed. Like I started to like get over my shit and start loving on this kid, you know? Because then, of course, I was going to give birth to my own child, and then I was like, how do I deal with that? How do I love her after I've had my own child? Like, does that change? Does all my love go to my own baby? And does she get any, you know? So it's just trying to figure it out, like, and of course, like I said before, there was no example for us to go by. So things started to get better after a couple of years. And not only between me and my daughter, like, you know, the relationship that we had, she was only young. She was only like, I think she was about 2 when we got married. So by the time I was like, yep, I'm ready to do this, she was probably about 4, around about 4. And things started to get better between us. And then, like, simultaneously, my marriage started to improve as well. So, that was buzzy because I only thought about that this week and I was like, yeah, that got better and then this got better. So let's carry on.
And all of that was like an inside job, right? Because if it wasn't for you allowing yourself to let go and accept what was, then how would you ever be able to allow your marriage to flourish and your relationship with your daughter to flourish?
Yeah, and it does. It has to be an inside job. And I guess that's the only thing that you have control of, you know, is things happen, but it's how you deal with it that makes a difference, you know?
Yeah.
So
your baggage turned into your blessing, hey?
Honestly, it really did. Yeah.
Right.
The baggage that I didn't want.
Right.
Is like, I can't imagine my life without the baggage, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Would you do anything differently?
No, because I feel like everything I went through was necessary, you know, necessary phases of my growth. Whether it had to do with my relationship with my daughter or my relationship with my husband, you know, being in a marriage that I wasn't sure of in the beginning. And yeah.
And here you are, 21 years later.
Yay!
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Tell me about the nuances or how difficult it is to navigate the other parent in this situation. I also have to preface, I kind of know the other parent as well, so that's really cool.
Yeah. I think in the beginning it was like, for me, it was like being married, having a child that's not yours, and then having to deal with another woman. So,
wow. Like,
how do you even begin to do that, right? Like,
right.
Can we just do one thing at a time, guys? I think it was, with my daughter, it was accepting part of my husband. So to fully love my husband, I had to accept everything of him, which included his daughter. And I think the same was with my daughter. if I was to fully love her, I had to accept and love her mother. And I think it was important for me that our daughter saw us get along, you know, or saw us trying to make it work. Because I've heard, man, like so many stories of people who don't get along, you know, like the step parents, and oh man, it's so ugly. Like it's so sad. And I didn't want to be like, I didn't want my family to look like that, you know, and I didn't want my children, my future children to come into this and see, you know, how ugly it could have been, or, you know, that's what I was trying to prevent. So, yeah, it was hard. It was hard to just be accepting of, this is my family, and then there was this other woman as well.
Wow. That's such a it's a unique thing to do, is to embrace somebody else. I think on the other side, I think that as a single parent, I at some point am going to also have another parent in our dynamic, you know, and no doubt my daughter's father will eventually find somebody. And I have the desire actually to make sure that I actually have a relationship with that person, because at the end of the day, it's the child that matters, and you want to model that exactly how you were describing.
Yeah.
How do you always bring it back to the child? Because it sounds like the way that you were able to accept her mom was through the love of your daughter. So how, in situations when it gets hot, heated, heavy, are you able to just bring that focus back to the child?
Far out. In the beginning, like I reckon the first couple of years that we were a blended family, it wasn't even about the child. It wasn't even about the child, right?
This is so real. This is as real as it gets, guys.
We were all caught up in our stuff.
Yeah.
That, like, for me, it wasn't even about the child. It was just like, I want to get my point across to you. I want to say this to you. I think this of you. And it was just, I know, it was just so...
Everyone had their own corners of like defending their own.
Yeah, and it was like, there's different dynamics, because there's like, you know, I had to manage my marriage at the same time, and, you know, because it bleeds into your marriage and starts to affect, you know, the relationship. Like there's a bit of friction there at times, you know, when you go through certain things. So, yeah, it was tough. Like it wasn't even about the child. So in order for it to be about the child, we had to get over our own shit. And so whatever
ego deaths.
Ego deaths.
Ego deaths.
Yeah. So whatever issues we had, and this didn't, you know, dissolve over a couple of years. It was like years.
Wow.
There were different issues going on. And as our daughter got older, the issues kept coming, you know, and they got bigger.
Yeah.
So then we would find ways to manage those issues and deal with them. I can't even remember what the question was.
That's okay. How, like, what advice would you say, like, give others who are in blended families that don't have, like you said, like the manual book or for blended families? What advice would you give to others on how to work as a team?
Oh my God.
With the other parents involved?
I think firstly you've got to let your ego go. And And in order to do that, a lot of love, a lot of understanding, a lot of empathy, a lot of compassion, not just for what you're going through, for what they're going through. Just to be able to put yourself, like for me, just be able to put myself in her shoes, having to share her daughter with another woman. So just being able to, to put yourself in their shoes and work through your stuff. Like you can't get to the bottom of what you're truly there for, which is the child or the children, until you work through your own issues.
How do you build a relationship of trust with everyone involved?
It takes time. Like,
takes time.
It takes a lot of letting your guard down. Forgiveness is huge. Grace. I think that goes hand in hand with forgiveness. But it comes with time. Like there's no really set time with trust. It's just, it builds over time.
That's beautiful. That's so beautiful. I'm just so curious because I'm like, I need to know these things. I asked this question, actually, I sent you a bunch of questions before we started this podcast. And one of them was, how do you safeguard, and when I mean safeguard your marriage, like what advice would you tell others in terms of like how to safeguard your marriage against any external forces, regardless of it being in a blended family or from any situation, any conflict or tension that arises? Like, you know that it's been 21 years or even just before that, you guys have been like together, known each other and have been working in partnership. Like, what kind of advice would you have, like, for people or couples on how to work through anything or navigate anything?
It's a great question. I think it takes a lot of you've got to be able to back each other up as like the first one. So, and being on the same page. So you can have a difference of opinions, but I think it's important that you actually are on the same page. Like, arrive at the same page if you do have, if there is that divide. I don't know. I don't know how else to answer that.
Look over to the hubby.
Me.
We can come back to that if anything arises.
Okay.
How do you discipline kids that aren't your own?
How do you discipline kids that aren't your own?
That aren't your own.
Oh, my God. How do you discipline kids that aren't your own? That was a hard one for me.
Yeah.
Because I don't know why, but I felt like I could smack her. And my mum, or actually it was my mum and my dad, they were like, you can't touch her. But it's the same with like, so they were like, you can't touch her. You're not allowed to fussy her, blah, blah, blah. She's not your child. But I was like, yes, she is. I'm her mother right now. So it was a little bit confusing, But even like with my own kids, like now they're like, why are you giving the kids a hiding?
Your
You know?
parents? Your parents?
My parents,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So they're like, you know, asking me, why are we giving our own kids a hiding?
Oh, it's different
like-
now, eh? That your grandparents.
Yeah, it's like, hang on. So, you know, I'm confused. You know, this man, so much confusion. Because then you guys gave us a hiding.
Yeah, right.
Like,
Right.
I've learned from you guys. Like, you know, what are we talking about here? I'm confused.
Yeah.
So, but I think it's different with stepkids because if you fussy or if you give the other, you know, that kid a hiding, like the other parent's going to feel some type of way.
Yeah.
So, and you're going to have to deal with that.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Did it get back to the other parent?
Oh, I'm sure it did.
Yeah.
I'm sure it did. So
That come out directly? Did that other parent like approach you or?
I don't think so. No, thinking back, no, I don't think so. Did it? No, it didn't. He's giving me the nod. No, it didn't.
What's your take on it now?
I think it's like I've fussied my kids the same, like regardless of whether you're a step kid or not.
Yeah.
You know? And by the way, sorry, I forgot to mention this. I sort of hate the word step parent, stepchild. I prefer bonus.
Love that.
Bonus mum
Yeah.
as opposed to step mum, bonus daughter. That just sounds better, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so
Like
too.
step just makes it sound like far removed. Like
Yeah,
I'm
it
not even a
does.
part of the neighbour.
Yeah. True that. That's so true.
So
I think it's like the technical term that we like probably get hung up on, but that's such a more softer approach, like bonus. Is
Yeah.
that you are letting that person know that they mean the world, they're a blessing to you, you love them, so
Yeah.
unconditional. The question was, this is so funny, you asked me what the question is, and I'm like, the question's gone, sis. I handed that over to
I
you.
think I know what it is. It was
How do you navigate disciplining now?
oh yeah.
that she's
So
older?
once I was like able to fully embrace her and love her, and then I had my own kids, had my son. He got fussy too. Like, you know, there was no special treatment because you were my biological child.
Yes.
Like, you got smashed up as much as she did, you know? Like, not smashed up, but
That's
you
all
know
right,
what I
child
mean.
safety. We don't need to be concerned.
That's right, you went for child safety.
No longer.
I'll
No
just
longer.
edit that one. So yeah, so the disciplining of all our kids, including our stepdaughter, bonus daughter, was the same.
Yeah.
Like, there wasn't any exceptions for anybody.
Yeah.
That's when I was able to treat them the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. What's her? Obviously, you'll probably get her on later on.
Yeah.
A podcast episode. What's your relationship with her like now? Like,
Oh my God.
gonna make me cry. Where are these tissues that we had?
I really can't imagine my life without her. Like we spoke about before, you know, the baggage that I didn't want. It's everything I want. Like, she has taught me so much about me, about her. like regardless of, you know, the hardest things that we've been through with her. Like, she's so beautiful, you know. And our relationship now is like even better than what it was before. She's like moved out of home now, and she's living with her partner, and now when we see her, it's like different because we don't get to see her a lot, you know, but when she does come around, it's like so precious, you know, and like you fully embrace that time, those times, because life is different now that she's not, you know, she's not living with us anymore, or she's not living with her mum or the other mum and dad. So it's just so beautiful to just have her come home and, you know, come home for dinner or like come and hang out, and we'll just chat. Like, yeah, we'll just chat about what's going on with her and, you know, what she's doing. And then vice versa, we'll, you know, fill her in on like what we're up to, stuff like that. So it's a beautiful relationship, and I believe that not only was I put in her life for her, like she was put in my life for me as well, you know, like she's totally transformed my life.
So beautiful. So beautiful. I can't wait to hear that podcast of episode.
Me too. I can't wait for her to come on, and she'll tell you about the hiding. She'll be like, yeah, my mum was ruthless. No.
Damn. What do you hope people to get out of this podcast?
I think the biggest thing is that it's possible to love and fully embrace a child that's not yours. A child that you didn't give birth to. Because I totally thought that. I'm like, how am I going to connect with this kid, you know?
Yeah.
Didn't even come out of me, you know? How, because that's the original bond that a child has with their mother is you carried them, you nurtured them, you know, for 9-10 months, and then you give birth to them. Whereas that didn't happen with me and her. So I think the biggest thing I want to come out of this is, you know, whatever that belief I had is now like non-existent. Like, what? And another thing I want to like bring forth is about how the exes don't get along.
Yeah.
Which I know there's like heaps and heaps of stories that are like that, sadly. But it's very possible. Like it's, you know, for everyone to get along.
Yeah.
It just takes a long time.
It takes a lot, but like what we've heard today.
It takes a long
Absolutely.
time. Like a long time.
You've mentioned that today. That's like key to what I've heard out of this sharing today. Is it takes time, it takes a lot of ego deaths within yourself to be able to just do that internal work, and then be willing, right?
Oh, massive, yeah.
I just can't imagine like. I do know how ugly it can get with families, like other parents, and it's just I love that you started this episode off with like there was no manual book for you. You didn't have it handed to you on a plate. There was no like internet at the time telling you about blended families. And I love that you're sitting here right now as like a library of information where we will get to have insight on what we can expect or what you guys have experienced or lived through, and draw upon your experiences to give us some insight on like what we can expect as people who are either entering blended families or have a lot to think about as step parents or bonus parents, you know?
And that's the thing, hey, is like, you don't go through these things to not share, you know? Like, shut your mouth was like, am I going to just not say anything or not share my experiences? And that's what I initially thought was, nah, I don't want to tell anyone. You know, it's just, it'll take effort and blah, blah, blah. But, you know, who am I going to help? But I don't know what it was, you know? It's like, no, think about it. You really didn't go through this journey to just keep it to yourself.
Yeah.
Like, there's totally so many people out there that could gain so much value from what's happened to you. So,
Absolutely. I mean, even...
So I'm glad that I'm actually opened up to the idea of sharing it, you know?
Yeah, I'm glad too. No, I am. And that's part of how this transpired, right?
Yeah,
like,
it really did.
I too have like, I'm not like, that wasn't my niche. Like I had a podcast previously and I was the same. Like it's actually really liberating to reclaim your story.
Oh my goodness.
And when you unlock that power of understanding how liberating and freeing it is to tell your story from your point of view.
Yeah.
And knowing that that could actually relate or land with somebody that it's going to benefit.
That's right.
It's just like so rewarding. And, you know, I'm very similar to you. I'm like, oh, I'm just going to you know, release it. And, you know, the universe will do whatever it will with it, right?
Yeah.
And then, hello, like, I was on a podcast, like, let's talk about how this all transpired. Like, and no doubt that's exactly what's going to happen to you. Like, I was on a podcast, you had reached out, right?
Yeah.
And it was just so strange because you were listening to these podcasts that I had put out there in the ethos and like feeding back to me in real time. And I was like, this is so weird. But it was like really such a great honor that you could resonate with some of the stuff. Because like half the time I'm like, I'm talking shit. Like I don't even know what I'm talking about, but it landed, right?
Absolutely.
And so just as much as it's landed, it's going to then for you and your podcast going to do the same and impact and ripple
Absolutely.
out to so many people.
Yeah. So don't discount your story, guys.
Don't do it. Be like Jules.
Be like Jules and don't shut your mouth.
Don't shut your mouth. That's exactly right.